if there's anything you need help finding.
All right.
Yeah, okay, cool.
You said Shane should send it to.
Yes, so Shane would send that to Danielle, who's our GM over there. And so I guess for today, because you said you normally do a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we're here.
Yeah.
I can move this here. We can have a conversation, talk about the book, importance, and things like that.
Yeah,
But
cool. And if there's anything you want to read out of it, or
Yeah.
that's cool.
can I grab a book?
Oh my gosh, yes. Let me grab one for you.
Okay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you
Okay,
doing?
I'm Chloe.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
So,
you.
read a little bit, then we'll share the conversation. So, we'll have a first person, like a little presentation that she has to like find out kids. So she's said that with to us, and then we can speak it together. Yeah. Is it? It's not gonna be in time. It'll just be something else that we can add. So she sent it to Shane. Great. That's great. Yes. Oh, great. She's cute. Okay, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah. Excellent, wonderful. Okay, look for you here. Okay. And let me turn on this. Yeah, it's kind of silly to like microphone it up, but it's for the people on the internet.
Oh, they're here.
Yeah. People on the internet. Gonna do a little presentation. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're happy to welcome Chloe O. Davis back to St. Louis to celebrate her new book, The Queen's English, the Young Reader's LGBTQIA+ Dictionary of Lingo and Colloquial Phrases. Chloe grew up here in St. Louis before going on to great things in the entertainment industry and is back in St. Louis to choreograph a show at the Muny. Welcome back. Yay! Tonight's event is possible because of your support. When you support Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into the local economy and it keeps our bookstore open, keeps our streets paved, libraries funded, the parks free, and all the other wonderful things that make St. Louis such a beautiful place to live. Thank you all for shopping local and supporting this event. We also want to welcome our virtual audience tonight. Hi, people on the internet, thanks for being here. My name is Elena Jove, and I'm a bookseller here at Left Bank Books. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about an upcoming event later at the end of this month on Wednesday, July 31st. We will be hosting James Patterson and Mike Lupica at the Two Hill Performing Arts Center to celebrate their new book, Hard to Kill. These tickets are available on our website, left-bank.com, as well as a full list of our other programming. Okay, so a little bit about tonight's book. This young reader's adaptation of The Queen's English is a nonfiction illustrated reference guide to the LGBTQIA+ community's contributions to the English language. This playful, richly illustrated visual dictionary is the perfect book for anyone who has ever wondered about the origins of the phrases like boy, drag, or demisexual, the history of the word queer, and the wonderfully diverse and wide-ranging histories that have contributed to the LGBTQIA+ culture and vocabulary. So a little bit about the author. Chloe O. Davis is an author who works in the entertainment industry in New York. A graduate of Hampton University and Temple University, she has centered her creative platform on amplifying the narratives of Black culture and heightening the awareness of the LGBTQIA+ community. Davis's work as a dancer, actor, and creative has allowed for her to travel to all 50 states and internationally, where she has spent 15 years researching, writing, and creating this book. Welcome, Chloe.
Oh man, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I am St. Louis native, so it's very exciting to be home. I currently live in New York City and currently in the Broadway musical Hell's Kitchen, which is Alicia Keys's new musical. And so I am back home in St. Louis because I'm choreographing at the Muny, choreographing waitress. So yes, so it's a lot of overlapping here, but I really appreciate Left Books for bringing me here to celebrate achievement in St. Louis, but also this beautiful book. I started creating the Queen's English because this is an adaptation for young readers, but I started creating the Queen's English back in 2006. So this is a project that is almost like 2 decades old as far as like research and creation of it. The reason why, because back in 2006, I didn't really see resources that articulated the diversity and also the intersectionality of identity. So me, I'm a proud bisexual, biromantic, demisexual individual who identifies as femme, but sometimes androgynous, right? Who has explored all types of relationship identities. And so again, I have language to kind of articulate that, but in like 2006, it was very much what language is out there representing who I am and the facet of who I am and the intersectionality of who I am. So when we think about identity, it's not just about our race or our age or our class, but it's who we are, meaning what is our expression to the world, what is our gender identity, what is our attraction, what are those other layers, our loves. Like I love theater, of course, because that's what I do. And so I wanted to find a resource that really celebrated and empowered that, and diving into words that made someone feel whole and full. So the Queen's English celebrates over 800 terms to use to describe our collective experiences with our identity. And it dives into the beauty and vibrancy and the fierceness of queer language, or I sometimes like to just say LGBTQIA+. Now, a lot of times I've had some questions as far as to say, is it best to say queer? Is it best to say LGBTQI+? Like, what is it best to say? And truly, it's best to just articulate the best word for the person or for the community. I don't think there's wrong answers. It's just when we introduce ourselves in space, we introduce ourselves with words usually that makes us feel affirmed. Whatever those words are, or pronouns are, those are the things that we want society to come to us and identify us with. But I do want to give a little history on the word queer. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book. On the word queer, queer was once a derogatory slur for homosexuality. By the 1980s, HIV and AIDS activists were determined to reclaim the term as a badge of honor for the LGBTQI+ community. Since the 80s, the younger LGBTQI+ generation have adopted queer as an umbrella term for anyone who identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, two-spirit, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, non-binary, gender fluid, and otherwise non-heteronormative. We'll get to that word in a second. But there are many identities within the LGBTQI+ community, and each person's label and preference and interpretation of that identity should be respected. So only use terms that someone has personally identified themselves with, and if you don't know, just ask. So when we think about queer, a little history about it, or etymology, is that yes, it once meant like something peculiar, odd, right? But over time, it was used as a derogatory slur for someone who identified as gay. But then, before even the word gay came about, it was being homosexual, right? So what happened though during the HIV and AIDS crisis, queer was reappropriated, meaning it was reclaimed to give power to something that dismissed someone, right? So many members in the community, many activists said, well, yes, I am queer. That is who I am. I am proud of that, right? And then over time, because of that reclaiming of a word or reappropriating of a word in our particular community, then now we have generations now, particularly in our younger generation, whether it be Gen Z or whether it be millennials or even more, using the word because it is this all catchphrase of just not being heteronormative. What's heteronormative? When we think of heteronormativity, it's thinking about someone who is heterosexual or someone who is cisgender, or the ideas and mindset of binaryism, right? So male, masculine, female, feminine, right? So we have this idea, the constructs of saying that it needs to be this or that. Queer allows this opportunity to say there is no this or that. There is vibrancy, there's fullness of how we want to identify. Now, a lot before queer, right? Gay was the word, yeah. So gay was like this universal umbrella. But when we think about gay, if we think same gender loving, or attracted to the same sex, or attracted to one gender or the same gender, right? We say that was gay. But when we think of the community, again, the diversity of this community, LGBTQI plus, saying the word gay didn't really articulate everyone's experience, right? And so that's why over time, queer was introduced as a better way of having this umbrella term. If we're not saying if we're trying to say the community, it's like queer is a great way to say it, or I like to say LGBTQIA plus, because I think it's so beautiful being able to say the names, right? Say what it is. And there is a portion I do want to read in the introduction, because there has been some joke around the alphabet people, or and I think it's not that. I just think that we have words that really articulate who we are. So this was a part of the dictionary. I say, so come indulge in the Queen's English. This dictionary welcomes all readers. All of us have a gender identity, a way of expressing our gender, a sexual orientation, a romantic orientation, and a need to understand those who are different from us. So be proud of the lingo within our LGBTQIA plus A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z community, because yes, ladies, gentlemen, and gender non-conforming queens alike, this lingo slays, right? So it's, again, it's this idea of the world will always dismiss or accept, but we have power to say what we accept is what we accept. So this was my way of saying, sure, whatever you say out there, yes, we are. And we do have language clearly that goes A through Z, right? Because that's what's represented here. So that's a little bit about queer and the etymology. So diving into the dictionary again of why it was created, I felt like I wanted to find a tool that truly helped me explore my identity. And I can say I've gone from being hetero-flexible and not even knowing what that means, but hetero-flexible, meaning like, okay, maybe when I was younger, I was like, yeah, I think I'm heterosexual, but I don't know. So there's flexibility there. So there's words like hetero-flexible. There's words like homo-flexible, right? But then it's like I came to a moment where it's just like, oh, there was curiosity of being attracted to a gender that is the same as mine, right? So then it was this idea of bi-curious or bi-curiosity, right? So that was another term that over time I felt empowered me. And then there was a time where I said, well, no, you know what? I do feel that I'm bisexual, right? So meaning I am attracted to more than one gender. So then with that, I was like, okay, that feels good, but that's talking about my sexuality. There's also as far as physical or like intimate in that way. But what we have to realize there's so many attractions. It doesn't have to necessarily be physical. There's also attraction of being romantic, right? And so I am bi-romantic. I'm also attracted to more than one gender. But someone can actually be their sexuality as far as like their physical attraction can be one thing, and their romantic attraction can be something totally different. So for instance, someone could, be physical with one person, right? One person who is either the same gender as them, so that's homo-romantic, or homosexual, or we say gay, right? We like to say that more than homosexual. That's kind of a little too derogatory. We don't like to use that anymore. But you also can have a romantic attraction to more than one gender. So you can be, gay, but your attraction romantically could be to more than one. So you can be bi-romantic, or you can be pan-romantic, meaning attraction to all, right? Or poly-romantic, attraction to many. So I think there's so many types of ways we can identify, but I just think in 2006 and all the way up to probably even 2015, I just don't think we had language, space, and opportunity for us to really dive into the vastness of what identity is. So I started to creating this book because I wanted a resource to help me articulate who I am first, right? Then I also, as we talked a little bit about what I do, I'm in theater, but I come from a dance background, and I was part of a dance company called Philadelphia Dance Company, Philadanco, based in Philadelphia, and a lot of my friends were part of the ballroom scene. So We know the ballroom scene now. Now we do. We know it because, of course, what? What do we know it from? Drag Race, of course. Ding, 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 ding. Right. So we know it from because like RuPaul's Drag Race. We also may have known it because of Pose, right? Pose was something on television that was groundbreaking, right? Having the most trans actors of color to be able to come into the space and have that type of representation. But what Pose is was actually diving into the ballroom scene of like the late 80s and 90s, right? And a lot of vibrant words that we know, like read, fierce, slay, shade, come through, over, all these words that are kind of popular because we have artists like Beyonce or, you know, Lady Gaga, or people that have used the language, but it comes from a community called the ballroom scene. And that is highly populated by a lot of Black, gay, trans, and queer people, as well as some Latinx, queer, trans, gay people, right? So, but it was a language that was used to kind of supplement the self-worth of the community, because we have to talk about phobias, right? Whether it be transphobia, homophobia, whether we talk about the prejudice, whether it be like based on someone's race, whether they be people of color, right? It was this space where a lot of queens, drag queens, right, in the late 60s, going into the 70s, early 70s, were part of the circuit, part of this, you know, part of the drag pageants. And they just weren't getting their due. They weren't winning, right? And it was questioned as why they weren't winning. Weren't they winning because they just weren't beautiful enough? I doubt it. You know, I think as to why they started their own ballroom scene is because they felt like they weren't welcomed in a space. They weren't welcomed in a predominantly white space. And so what they did was create a safe space for people of color, trans, gay, lesbian, you know, people of color to come in, and it is mostly Black, and it did start in New York City. So there's also in New York City, we know there are immigrants, right? I mean, like we have Puerto Rican, Dominican, you know, Colombian. We just have like a lot of flavor in New York, and they also mix with Black people, and so it was this vibrant space that was created. So House of La Beja was one of the first houses that were found. We have queens like Doreen Corey, or we have House of Ebony. So there are different houses that were found, and these spaces were to be able to bring children, house mother, house father, bringing the children, the young up and coming walkers, or the young up and coming, you know, LGBTQIA plus individuals, to give them a safe space where they can truly land and be themselves, right? So the language that we hear, vibrancy of like fierce, shade, come through, work, those were actually things, or Vogue. You know, we know quote unquote Vogue from Madonna. That's where like the craze came from. But truthfully, in the 90s, Madonna went to balls. She went to balls, and she was in love with voguing. And voguing actually is this idea of battling or having a conversation or throwing shade through the body, right? So Madonna loved it, right? And brought it to mainstream. And so a lot of times, if we don't know our history, people may think, oh, Madonna created it. No, it comes from the ballroom scene. So with that being said, I found that there was a lot of language that was somehow misplaced in history or appropriated in history. And another piece of this dictionary is making sure that I was allowing a space for language to thrive in its originality, meaning giving credit where credit is due. So when we look through the book, there's also spaces of like, did you know, or usage know that this term originated in the ballroom scene, but has been, you know, appropriated by the larger LGBTQIA plus community, or general population, or something like that. Or we'll say like this term originated in the gay community, the male gay community, and has been appropriated by the larger LGBTQI plus community, or, you know, things like that. So this book also allows documentation of language, documentation of queer language, which is something that, as I was doing research with this, it's far and in between. And I remember when I was pitching this idea to, you know, getting publishers to get on board. It took them a while, but it's okay. It was very much about, well, we don't know this word. It's not available. Exactly. It's not available because there's not a footprint or a dictionary to say, yes, this word is true. Because a lot of this language is based in community. We know this language because it's a part of communities. So a lot of communities represented here. We have, of course, we talked about the ballroom scene. We have the leather community, which is based in Chicago, started in Chicago. We know that San Francisco. Of course, when we talk about the intersectionality or diversity within a community, of course, we have the lesbian community, but then there's words that specifically come from the white lesbian community, the black lesbian community. For instance, before the even word lesbian came about, they used the words femme and butch. So the femme butch binary started in like around in the 1940s in lesbian in bars, but this idea of femme and butch, right? So if you're femme, then what? It's these binaries, right? Femme, you are attracted to, you are a woman who represents yourself, your gender expression is feminine, right? And then if it was butch, then you were a woman whose your gender expression was masculine, right? These binaries. Now guess what? There was someone called the Kiki girls, right? Now, during that time, the Kiki girls were like outcasts. And why were they outcasts? Because they said, I don't care if someone's butch. I don't care if someone's femme. I just like who I like. But to imagine that you were an outcast because you liked what you liked, which is what we do now. But then it was kind of unheard of. Because even in our community, a lot of times we still wanted to be along this heteronormative idea, even with our ideas of butch and femme, right? This binaries. But when we had this mix, it was like outcast. So words like that started. Now, if I go even further back during the Harlem Renaissance, words that come out of there from our lesbian community, it actually was bull dyke and bull dagger. So when we think of the word dyke, well, it actually came from Harlem Renaissance. Bull dyke, bull dagger, right? And that was shortened to dyke. Now, who were bull daggers, bull dykes? They were basically women who liked women, or there were women who had a masculine flair about them. Anyone familiar with Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. They were these amazing, blues, jazz singers, right? And they actually self-identified as bull dykes and bull daggers, right? So, a lot of times they're like, oh, that just feels so derogatory. Well, it didn't start that way. What happens is words are created, and then over time, when someone announces them, they become slurs, right? To kind of like hit at someone, right? And so when we think of bull dyke, bull dagger was shortened to dyke over time, appropriated, given a negative slur, right? So then it becomes something that doesn't feel good. But then over time, there's actually a motorcycle club. Do you know their names? That celebrates dyke. Dykes on bikes. So basically they were founded in San Francisco during the San Francisco Pride Parade. And basically it was a group of lesbians, right? Dykes, but basically they wanted to reappropriate or empower the word dyke and empower masculinity, but still being a woman, right? And so there is a motorcycle club called Dykes on Bikes, right? So I say this because one of the beautiful things about language that is forever evolving, and it's wonderful to know where it started, where it went, and where it is now. I think the beauty of this language is it tells us our history, it tells us our present, and it's going to tell us our future. Now, one thing that I'm using the word like dyke and queer and things like that. We also have to understand, and it's something that I wrote in the dictionary, that not all members of the community say these words, agree with what this is, and have different experiences. So that's why I'm always encouraging, as we're reading through this, there are these usage notes to say that this term could be derogatory, or this term could be a slur, or this term was once derogatory, but over time has been reappropriated to feel empowering. So there's a situation, I want to say there's SAGE. So there is an organization for LGBTQIA plus elders called SAGE, right? Now, over time, LGBT was the way to go, right? And they were very adamant about not adding Q, because queer, let's figure out, they didn't like the word queer. And this is why, because again, if someone is an elder, maybe they experience queer as a very derogatory state, right? So with that, it's like, well, I don't feel good about that, and I don't want that part of my environment or a word I need to hear, because it could be triggering, right? But then you have, like I said, you have a younger community that's very much like, oh, queer feels absolutely empowering. It feels like it's exactly who I am. I love this word. So there was a conversation between a young group of LGBTQIA plus people, and then we have our elders, right? And they actually had a beautiful conversation surrounding the word queer. Both heard each side, right? And then after understanding each other's journey, the elders said, okay, you know what, we can add it, because they understood that it has evolved and it is empowering to this younger generation. And with that, they want to be advocates for them and making sure that they feel good growing up to have words that really feel good to them. So I think that's a beautiful explanation of how words evolve over time, and also a beautiful explanation that everybody doesn't have to like and want and do the same thing, right? And there's space for everyone. So that's something that's very much encouraged in this book. The other part that I feel that's really necessary and a lot of fun is that there's history, right? There's LGBTQI plus history. For a very long time, I felt like history was not celebrated in a way that was empowering. It was, and so what I wanted to do is dive into what queer history is, whether it be marriage equality, and learning what that is and how we even got to that point, whether it be the representation of LGBTQI plus people in our military and how we even got to that, whether we also talk about youth homelessness, which is really important to talk about, especially when we talk about what happened during COVID, right? That is a big part about it, because a lot of times youth are dismissed from their homes because of their sexuality, sexual orientation, or gender identity, right? Or even gender expression. So you do have a lot of youth homelessness, right? When we talk about the percentage of who's there, it's youth, right? Then we also have things that I think is really interesting when we talk about gender affirming practices, right? How to tuck, how to bind, whether that be for again, gender affirming practices, or whether that be for drag, but that's something to have, like, how do you do it? And so, in my research and also being able to really connect, I'll talk about research in a second, being able to connect with community, I actually had friends say, we're going to create something like a guide, like a one-on-one, tucking, one-on-one, binding, one-on-one. I think that's really important, because we have to understand, yes, we're in St. Louis, and yes, I live in New York City, and there are places that are quite liberal, and there are places that are not. We don't have those resources. Yes, we have the internet. Yes, we have Twitter, and we have YouTube, and we have all types of social media, but there's something very special about a book, right? And I wanted to be able to bring information in a book that's also trustworthy, that also guides with the lens of being able to empower, encourage, educate, inform, right? And then there's other, we talked about the Harlem Renaissance, we talked about the ballroom scene. We also talk about, families, LGBTQIA plus families, right? And how they're built, and so things of that nature. So we have these, I call them interstitials throughout the dictionary, kind of diving into the who, what, where, when, and why of the queer community. Now research, like I said, it's been 2 decades of this. It's been such a beautiful journey, because I have literally met so many wonderful people, strangers, that we share stories. So this is about people's stories, right? What words feel good to them? How do we define that? How do we use it? What region is it used? What community is it used, right? So I've really loved the experience of research, because I started off with my dance company, and it was very much about, what does that word mean? Because it seems like it means, right? And a lot of times I don't consider this language slang at all. I think this is a true lexicon. And so I, would ask, what does this word mean? But a lot of times when we're explaining what we think is slang, we use slang to explain it. So what I would kind of listen to it, and I would kind of be witty and silly and try to redefine it in an academic way. But then we just would giggle, because it would just be really good. It was like, wow, that pretty much is. And then so that used to kind of be a passion project, or just something I started to pick up. Then over time, I realized that the words started to grow. And over time, it was 50, and then there was 100. And a lot of times what aligns this book with my career as an artist is because every time I was in a different artist space, I was introduced to different identities. So Philadelphia is a majority Black company, right? So I'm diving for Black gay males particularly, right? So I dived into a lot of ballroom language, or language that's very heavy in the Black gay community. I was in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the brotherly and sisterly love. I just feel like everybody's let's be free. So then there I was able to dive into the Black lesbian scene and learn words like butch queen, learning words like stud and soft stud. But then, I go on tour, and I went on tour with the Adams Family. So then I was able to dive into words that, and honestly, I was the only Black person in my company, or just in the whole moment. So then I was immersed in another experience, and learning about white gay terms, and especially the animal kingdom. So like otters and bears and wolves, oh my, you know what I mean? So learning about that, and then diving more into the differentiation with the lesbian terms, like like butch and femme versus like stud and soft stud and things like that. The differentiation between like how like lesbian language is used, because we have like chapstick lesbian, we have and so those are like lesbian spectrum. We have butch, which is like butch and femme put together. There's so many layers of expression, and this is also expression, right, within the lesbian community. And then we also dive into, aromantic community, so the aro and the ace, asexual community, asexuality. So when I'm also demisexual, so I'm part of, the asexuality community, right? So allosexual, meaning having sexual yearnings, desires, or intimacy physically, versus someone who is asexual, meaning there is you don't need it, or you don't want it, or there's lack thereof. And then you have demi right in the middle. And for me, that was one of the words that made me feel alive, because I was like, wow, yes, it's not that I don't have or want to do it. It's just I have to have like a mental connection, an emotional connection with someone to be able to be like, okay, I'm ready to be physical, right? So these are all the types of communities. There's also the bear community. There's also, of course, we have the TGNC community, transgender nonconforming community. We have the binary community. Like there's so many. We have trans and non-binary. There's so many overlapping of identities, and I just wanted to pour in a platform that celebrated that language, that helped us learn more about ourselves, to help us learn more about each other. And so that is the purpose of this, is truly to celebrate the spectrum of identity, and also to empower the diversity in that, and also to be more informed of the intersectionality of that, and then also to kind of dive into communities and people and identities that have not had a platform. Because a lot of times, if you don't have a platform, then it creates erasure, right? And what I wanted to do to make sure that it doesn't happen is to be able to talk about where things come from, who has ownership, quote unquote. And I do quote unquote because, of course, language is expansive, but it is important that we give credit where credit is due. And that is when we have in the dictionary, like usage notes, this term comes from, or this term is commonly used in, or, having that is really important. And then the other part of the dictionary is its beautiful, beautiful illustrations. So as I kind of like flip through, it's absolutely colorful. It's absolutely engaging, because I always said, if I was going to nerd out, then I have to do it with some creativity. And so I love it because in our original version, which is the adult version that came out in 2021, and that one is with Clarkson Potter and Imprint of Penguin Random House. And then this one is with Simon & Schuster. It came out in April. But the thing about it is the illustrations, and I really wanted to celebrate, again, LGBTQIA plus identity. So really bringing in artists to come and create, because a picture, again, is over 1,000 words, right? So having pictures go along with some of these illustrations, I think is really cool. So for instance, this is Bicon, right? A bisexual icon, dicon, gay icon. Let's not forget our beautiful bicons. We have Shannon, we have Willow, we have people like that. And then here's like a really cool illustration of people that we're like identifying. So that's the fun part of this dictionary too, is that there's illustrations, it's very colorful. And then another part that I really like, if I can find it. So throughout, I'm gonna try to find a heavy page, but throughout the dictionary, you're gonna see pride flags, right? And not just regular pride flag, but a plethora of pride flags, right? Because there are so many, like demisexual has its own pride flag. Of course, for equality, let's see, I've got to find some more pride flags throughout. But pride flags are scattered throughout based on, here it is, gray, asexual, or gray sexual. That's another one. So throughout this dictionary, gender fluid, you're going to find pride flags that is also aligned with that identity. So it is truly a celebration of identity that is empowering. And I really think now, especially for our youth, having an opportunity to dive into language that helps them navigate the exploration of identity. And for us, even as adults, to help us navigate the exploration of identity. Because what I do believe is identity is forever evolving. And we don't necessarily have to stay one thing or feel like we're pigeonholed to one thing, that there are still layers of us that we just haven't discovered yet, or that we can feel confident in discovering and being saying, oh, well, this is me. I do feel this way, you know, and whether that be our expression, how we show ourselves to the world, whether it be our gender identity, how we feel about ourselves, whether it be our attractions, plural again, right? Because we talk about romantic, we talk about physical, and we also can talk about relationship attractions, right? Like monogamy, being poly. Like these are also types of attraction, and I think it's just really necessary that we take the time to really find out who we are and all the aspects of that. There's a section in here that I love. It's called, you know, who are you? And it has like a list of all types of terms that you can use to really find yourself. And then I think what's important too, especially with our youth, it's like finding my identity. Who am I? And I like this section because it's saying our identity is is the core part of our makeup. It is what makes you unique. Self-discovery is an important step in finding our full identity. This is a process of learning more about ourselves, exploring who we are, and evolving into who we want to be. It is common to have stages of your life when you question your identity. You may be uncertain about how you feel about others, unsure how you want to express yourself, or curious about exploring new labels. This is all normal. Having time to fully discover all the unique parts of you, gender expression, attraction, feeling, ability, even personality and values is necessary. Do not feel rushed when trying to find the labels or words that feel right to you. Feel safe and empowered to ask the question, who am I? And discover all the layers you feel that is mostly authentic to you. Some labels will feel right and some will not. So that's really important. So we have like this guide. It's like, what could my gender identity be? And it's saying, look through the dictionary and find gender identities that you connect with and are interested in exploring, and pick as many as you want. Because guess what? We're always evolving. Or what can my gender expression be? Again, your gender expression is your outward characteristics. So your appearance, your behaviors, your attitude that communicate your identity to society. So again, look through and I'm telling you, are you filled through? Who am I attracted to? Same thing. And then what words would I like to use to identify myself, but I'm afraid to use? I think that's a part too. And I think truly as adults, we're still like, I don't know. And so that's why I think that, whether it's this young reader's version or it is actually the adult version, I do think that this young reader's version is for everyone. There's something beautiful about when things are simplified. And having and even experiencing places and times in our adult lives when as a kid we may not have that. So being able to go back to that time and kind of be your hand held differently with empowerment and love and courageousness, right? And so that is my joy with this dictionary, is that it does not only do that for our youth, but it is also a connective tool for our youth as well as their guardians and caregivers. Whether that be their parents, whether that be their grandparents, whether that be their mentors and teachers and counselors. I think that's a beautiful way for us to connect. And I do think if we are working with youth, that we also have this tool so that way we can lean into their world of thinking so we can also connect. I will say when it comes to language and expression of self, I think we might have to take a back seat to our youth because they're brave in doing it. I really like a section in here. It's a coming out section. And I thought this research was really fun. I was able to go to some schools in New York City and talk to some 4th graders and some 5th graders and some 7th graders. And they actually had some really amazing coming out advice for their peers. So I want to kind of share some things that they were saying because I'm like, oh, thanks. seconds. Bam. Okay. So if we kind of see, so this is coming out. Okay. Accept the most authentic you. And the LGBTQIA plus community, coming out is a phrase most commonly used in reference to a person sharing their sexual orientation, romantic orientation, gender expression, or gender identity to the world. It is a part of your personal journey towards self-love, self-acceptance, and living authentically. Coming out can happen on your own term and your own pace. It is never too early or too late to come out. Sometimes it's even better to think that you are not coming out, but coming into your most amazing self. Telling someone, especially your family or loved ones, that you're LGBTQIA+, is a big step and can sometimes feel scary. For some encouragement, a few young friends share their best coming out or coming into yourself advice. So this is Lexi, she, her, 5th grader. Lexi says, coming out is hard, but when you come out, you should surround yourself with people who love you no matter what. So when you come out, nothing should change. You should, and they should love you then no matter what. So that's Lexi. And then here's Athena. Athena goes by they, Z, 5th grader. Gender expression is kind of like how you express yourself, like with your clothes, with your hair, or with your makeup and stuff. Your gender expression doesn't have to match your gender identity. And sometimes your gender expression could be maybe giving off the vibe that you're masculine when you actually identify as a girl, or the other way around. Just be you. So that's from Athena. And then you have Emerson, she, they. This is another 5th grader. Sometimes people will put you in a box and think you are one gender based on how you look. They will think you are automatically a boy or a girl because of how you dress and look. Not everyone is going to understand that you are non-binary. Still, be yourself. Find people who can relate to you and know who you are, who can relate to who you are, even who you want to be, and then they'll support you. So I really like this. And then in addition to, it's like, there's some more resources, and I'll talk about this. It says, are you interested in reading more books about LGBTQIA+ youth? Here's a list of books that you may enjoy and find helpful to assist you on your journey with exploring your gender identity and sexual orientation. So there's a list of books here. The other big thing about this dictionary, resources, right? So at the back of the book, there's over 90 resources back here from across the country that surround themselves with empowering, celebrating, helping, advocating for LGBTQIA+ youth, right? And so I think that's really important that we have resources. So not only is this a celebration of language and also history and the who, what, where, when, and why of the queer community, but it's also about where can I immediately go to get what I need, right? So we have so many organizations listed here, and it was very beautiful to be able to dive into celebrate all the organizations, companies, and communities that are really supporting celebrating the spectrum of identity. So that is the Queen's English. If we have questions, that's so awesome. I'm open, or if you just want to look through the book more, but I really appreciate you all online and you all here allowing me to talk more about this. This is my love letter to myself as well as to my community, and there is a dedication page that kind of starts the dictionary, so I do want to read that. This dictionary is dedicated to all the LGBTQI+ youth who take the courageous path each day to completely be yourselves. You encourage us all to love our inner beauty and ideas, even when faced with the challenges of not being embraced by others. I write to affirm and remind you that you are exceptional and more than enough. I absolutely see your greatness. Together, we will build a safe, respectful, empowering, and loving environment for you to thrive. Always know that there is a hug, high five, and fist bump ready for you whenever you need it. So that's the dedication page.
I have a number of things to say. First, I guess a comment, which is just for the first part of my life, I simply did not have the language. I simply didn't know the words. And so there was no possibility for me to even begin transition. So the book is, this is hitting for me. The second thing I wanted to ask is you're talking about your research, and it's so interesting. because you started this in 2006,
Mm-hmm.
and language is what evolves.
Evolves, yes.
So when do you decide that, like, okay, I'm done?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm never done, but I think, okay, so I started in 2006. However, I continued to work on this even without being with a publisher yet. So I didn't start with a publisher until 2018, late 2018, going into 2019. So this work, I just continued to do it because I just believed. I just believed that it was important, and no matter what, I was gonna create this platform, this vessel, right? So I would just continue to discover and adapt and evolve and not leave things out because I didn't want to whitewash anything. I just wanted to make sure that information continued to feed in, right? Something even just saying LGBTQIA+. So when I first started, I was already at LGBTQ. Already. I knew that was that. By the time I was with my publisher in 2018, 2019, I was already at LGBTQI+, right? That's when, or around like, no, I'm not 2000, yeah, I was already there because I want to say around 2015, I want to say, I was already at LGBTQ plus QIA. And then GLAAD introduced in 2016 the Q. But before that, I was already saying, I want to say all the letters, right? So when GLAAD introduced Q, and I was like, okay, great. So when I went to the publishers, it was still LGBTQ. That felt good to people. And they were like, well, do you want to change it? I said, no, I actually want to add a plus, because I think there's more. And so LGBTQI+. And why the importance of that is I want to name it. I want to say that there's more. I don't want to stop. And it may feel like a mouthful, but that's okay. If I can empower someone's identity, I want to do that. And so a little history about even how it went from LG, lesbian, gay for a while, right? And then it was like, what about B? What about bisexual? There was LGB. And then over time it turns into LGBT, right? And then that's when it was like, okay, and then it was like gay doesn't work anymore because it's LGBT, right? And then so it just all the time we were able to like gradually add letters. So in the dictionary, what I do is that gradual build of acronyms, it's in there. It's like so there's sections called like did you know? And so under that you'll see that type of explanation of how history evolves. So with the dictionary, there's very interesting because there are words that I found back in 2006 that have not changed. It just has not changed. But then there are other words that I've had to, it's not that it's changed, but it has evolved, and then there has to be more than one definition. So that's a beautiful thing too, because in the dictionary, it's not that it's this way and this is the right way. It's like, no, there are ways and they are all included. So that way, however you navigate this experience with the word, it is represented. So that's what has layered there. It's like maybe there's more than one definition based on how that evolution has started. Even when we think about the word, is it BOI? Boy, I feel like there's evolution with that. But there's definitely evolution of words of how when it used to mean this, and it still has that. But then over time, it has emerged to something else, and having both of those definitions, or even three, is important. So that's how I was able to kind of enrich the dictionary is having that. Because what I didn't want to do is leave words out, right? Because for instance, there's words like fruit or pansy, and those are old words, right? However, I think it's beautiful to have them there because we know the history of it. These are words in the 1940s, 1920s, you know what I mean? So having that. But that was the evolution of words allowed me to, or time actually allowed me to really create this in a beautiful way. So I think this book needed time so it can be as vibrant as it is. Again, there's over 800 terms. I think actually the young readers is really close to 9, like just a little bit shy of 900 words. I think that's really impeccable. So, I think also the iteration. So the first book came out in 2021. Okay. There's also a UK version. So that came out. So I was able to dive into, and I worked with a consultant there and dive into UK history, right? And then this one came out in 2024. So I feel like this is now even, no offense, but I feel like it's even better than the first because it's updated. You know what I mean? It's diving into like what's happened between, and I can't even say 2021 because, books take a long time to publish. So even though it came out in 2021, The Bad Boy was finished in 2020. You know what I mean? So it was allowed me to have a good 3.5 years to research some more. So I think that's what this is. I think it's this ever evolving guide of just finding more research and creating new additions, so that way we can never leave the old, but we can always invite the new. Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to ask. You talked a little bit about simplifying, about I guess what I'm really curious about with simplifying is like, is that a process where you're kind of having to kill your darlings in a way, or what did that
Thank
feel
you for
like?
that. Yeah, so actually when I said simplify, it was more about language that could be more appropriate in explanation to 9-year-olds and up. So it's not that I simplify, meaning the difference between the two, there are some adult terms that just needed to be excused. So for the young readers, but if you want to dive into those things, we have the adult version. But there are just some ways of explaining, using words that may be a bit fuller. And so using a way that the words don't have to be as full, and we can just kind of, that's so simplifying in that way. So I didn't necessarily have to not include something that I really wanted to do. I actually was able to add more to this one.
That's good.
And because just updating words, boy flux was something that was new to this one. But several words have been added because just a discovery of more words. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Yes.
So in your decades of research, and also like taking a note from your author's note that you've been all over the country and internationally, have you found outside of the United States, where have you found the most welcoming queer communities that you were able to visit with and during all your?
I would, of course, the UK.
Yeah.
I want to say Germany. But UK was, it's a lot of parallelisms with, the UK and the United States. And I think, there are some historical moments that are very much in parallel. And so as far as friendly, I feel like there are many countries that are, however, there are countries that are not. And so that's what I am finding, is that when people are able to get their hands on one of these books, because they have the UK version or there's a US version that they're able to go, it's really empowering for them. So, it's not about, I feel like the places I get to visit, there has been friendly moments where I can just be and people can just be, but I definitely have acknowledged places where that is not, and figuring out a way of how to, if this is to be international in other spaces, how they can do that and do it safely.
Yeah.
Because there has been people that say, I have your book. I'll get DMs from, because there's also the Queen's English US, at the Queen's English US, if you can find us on social media. But because it's available, people in different countries that may not have the opportunity to be as open and free as we are in the United States. And that's something I also like to talk about with that. And let's, before we go out of the country, we can stay in the country and talk about what's happening now in our country, right? With people being able to fully live authentically with who they are, based on their attraction or their gender identity. So I think this book is timely for us to have conversations, because I think a lot of times it's because we don't know, and we fear not knowing, or we fear being wrong, right? And so with that, we kind of dismiss it. So if we can have more open and engaging conversations about words and about identity, and do it in a way where it's respectful, and it's yes, I know you've thought this way for a long time, and society's constructs have made that happen. However, what's happening now is not that. And this is who I am. This is how I identify. And these are my pronouns. And it feels great if you could respect them and learn how to use them. And, I think we just need to have more conversations. And then there are people who really absolutely want to know more, but scared to make the mistake. So then we also have resources for that, to say, okay, this is what I do. But then again, having conversations to not feel fearful. I know misgendering is a huge thing. So it's a lot of times, we don't even ask someone what their pronouns are or things like that because we don't want to misgender. You know, but then it makes it like we're disconnected. So, you know, sometimes we can introduce her like, hi, I'm Chloe, I'm she, her. You know what I mean? So if I'm saying who I am first, then that allows, again, conversation for us to open up about who we are. So this book is also about encouraging conversations around diversity and inclusivity and intersectionality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, yay.
Yeah.
Give it for Chloe. Yay.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Mhm.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
That was great. I know how to do this end string. That's the button I push. Yeah.